Welcome, Vanya, to the Empathy Edge podcast. I have been looking forward to this conversation with you as a fellow brand strategist, empathy advocate, all of the things. I feel like our work is very closely aligned. So I'm excited for you to talk about how you bring empathy into your work for your clients from a design perspective, from a space perspective, and that ability to connect and engage with their audiences. So welcome to the show.
Hi, Maria. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
So before we kick off the conversation, as I always do, tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to this work and what are you so passionate about within this work?
Okay. I'm from South Africa. I was born and raised in Cape Town, and I studied art. I was a very artistic child, so a lot of drawing and sort of art was my thing all through school. So I went to study art. I studied painting, and then very quickly after graduating, I realized that's not a job, unless you kind of figure a way to monetize fine art. That's not a career path for a lot of people. So I just found a job, any job. It was working for a sort of middleman agency that would create the production, that would do the production in between agencies and the producers, so like printers and people who make the physical manifestation of
Right.
advertising collateral. And I loved that job. I loved learning about how to interact with people, how to deal with clients, how to get suppliers to, do you favors, very short timelines, etc., give you the best cost, etc., which I think lay the foundations of empathy and sort of understanding how to work with people empathetically.
Yes.
But really, what I was interested in and what really grabbed my attention was we would work with these very glamorous, account managers and all these advertising agency executives. And I just thought, I want to be one of those guys. I don't want to be driving in my little car off to printers, even though I really enjoyed the job and it was a fantastic grounding in my career. I just saw this world of advertising and I thought that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be.
Hmm.
So I then got married. I met my husband who is Scottish. So we moved to London from
Yay.
Cape
Yay
Town.
to the Scottish husbands. I love it.
Yes, wonderful things. Great accent. And I used that as an opportunity really to get into that world in London. Just making that jump from the job I had, which wasn't in this at all. People won't necessarily know this, but in our world, there's different sort of streams, marketing or advertising or branding that sometimes get smushed together. So having just moved back to London from Cape Town, I used that as an opportunity to find a job in this world, this glamorous world of what I thought was advertising. And people generally don't know this, but there's different streams within this world we work in. You have brand, which is more brand strategy. That's the personality of a organization. You've got advertising, which is the ads you see on TV, radio ads, print
Promotion. Yes.
promotion, etc.
Yes.
You've got marketing, which is all of these activities thrown together, but there's different disciplines within this world we do. So I just landed this job as an account manager at, again, not the right place. It was a company that did, the big outputs of all the collateral. So spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, not very interesting at all. But I kind of worked my way through this world and then slowly within time discovered what it is that I was attracted to and what really sort of floated my boat. And it was, discovering or working with clients in the world of brands specifically to understand what are they, what's their core DNA, how do they speak, how do they express themselves. People often say, oh, you design logos, but logos are the last. It's the last thing.
Exactly. I always say a brand is not a logo. Yeah,
No,
exactly.
a brand is how a customer, how you speak to your customers, how the security guard interacts with customers. It's everything about how a company portrays themselves. And then, you know, there's a logo at the end of the day.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so that's how I sort of found myself in this world. I've always worked on the client services side of things. That's evolved over time to be more client, overseeing client relationships as a
Mhm.
whole for the business, new business strategy, etc. But it's always been on the client relationship side of things.
Right. Right. So obviously, so much of what you're saying resonates for me. Obviously, that's why I was always interested in brand and marketing was not only just how you can connect, but how you can tell stories and how
Hmm.
brands when used for good, I always say marketing
Hmm.
can be used for good, not for evil, how you can leverage brand to provoke, to inspire, to ignite, to transform, to get people moved to to take an action. And it was the psychology of it. And it sounds like for you too that I was really drawn to was the psychology and the storytelling of it. Uh,
Absolutely.
and when you see brands that embrace that, whoops, from a very genuine perspective, it's a beautiful thing. It becomes part of someone's life, it becomes part of their story.
Hmm.
And those are the brands that become the power brands because they become part of our own identity. And not from a
Hmm.
materialistic point of view, but just from a, hey, this company, this customer service rep, this salesperson, they understand me and they understand what my life is like. And this is how, for me, I even bridged into empathy, was
Hmm.
understanding that empathy is the superpower of branding and brand strategy and marketing and storytelling. So I want to dive into that because your agency has worked with some big organizations,
Yeah.
museums, cities, just, really big organizations where it can sometimes be hard to, I guess, for lack of a better term, herd the cats
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
get agreement.
Absolutely.
So when we talk about empathy from all sides, the importance of listening, how do you work with clients to engage that listening so that you talk about not seeing things in black and white and understanding that there's an openness to both sides and that great design listens to all sides and appreciates people's stories.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that philosophy and also illustrate it in action with some of
Hmm.
your client engagements?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, clients, even if they're the CEO of a major, organization, if they are the top level of what they do, they're just humans. So what we do is we build and we build these bridges and relationships with clients. Um, Clients aren't just commercial objectives. They're not just, their KPIs for that quarter. They have their
Right.
own, they've got their own objectives, they've got their own agendas, they've got their own insecurities. Maybe they didn't sleep well last night. They're
Yeah.
they're just they're people we need to build relationships with. And in terms of our process, what we spend a lot of time, budget, and energy on is the initial phase of discovery for all our clients. So we really spend a lot of time, listening, having conversations through interviews, through workshops. We've got very distinct and focused interviews and workshop programs that we do with our clients to get under the skin of what it is they're about, but not just what they're about. Why are they distinctive from their competitors? What is it that they are doing or saying? In very crowded marketplaces often, there's thousands of museums in London. Why is the one we're working with today, worth your time, your energy, and your money? So we spend the time to understand who they are from everyone's perspective. We speak to the CEO, we speak to the security guards, we speak to the front of house staff, we speak to a range of people. Obviously, it's not everyone's opinion will ultimately be what's incorporated in the brand. We get that, but we really want to understand what the organization as a whole feel. What do they sound like? What really are the pain points? Where our clients, senior clients, often not, what are they often not aware of that the more junior people would be saying, etc. So we work to understand that, and then we then distill that into a brand strategy that speaks to not just who they are now, but who they want to be in the future. What is it that they're aiming for? How do they want to differentiate themselves from their
Mhm.
competitors, and how do we build a commercial proposition against that?
Yeah. And I had a really interesting conversation on a podcast I was a guest on, Chris Do, the feature. And we talked about, because he comes from the creative side, and he was talking about how sometimes it's hard for creatives to embrace empathy because there's a lot of
Hmm.
ego, there's a lot of
Hmm.
insecurity, which I found working at ad agencies and some of the most brilliant creative minds,
Hmm.
they do need some lessons in empathy and
Hmm.
listening. So how have you manage that within your own teams? What training do you do? How do you hire? Um, what are you helping them embrace so that they know that in the end, the creation will be the thing that is successful?
That's a big question, and well, I don't want to put my foot into anything. Creatives
Yeah.
are known, as you say, they're known for, really, but those creatives are not the ones that make it.
Yeah.
Good creative and good strategic commercially driven output is driven by what you have heard and how to reflect that back not only to your client but to the audiences they need to be reaching. So I think that sort of leadership, creative leadership, needs to come from the top of an organization. I'm very lucky to have always worked with, and currently I'm working with, some of the most brilliant creatives in the industry, people who really genuinely understand how to listen to clients and to get that nuggets out of them.
Yes.
We work in iterative processes. It's not always the right thing, but we will give our clients 5 or 6 creative routes, some really, pushing the boat out and making them feel deeply uncomfortable. And the creative, not in it, but to see
Yeah.
where that boundary lies. How far
Right.
can you push a messaging or a creative proposal?
Hmm.
And it's through this creative leadership that, top down really creates that culture internally of listening and distilling and so on. Obviously, there's always broken hearts when the route a client selects is not the one we wanted, or
Right.
but but generally we only can do our job effectively if we, one, work within a parameter. So we know
Mhm.
what the framework is that we work within. We know that's a no-go, etc. This is the clear brief. We've defined the brief, so we know what we are responding against. But also, if we're reflecting back to the client, what will best serve them reach their goals and their objectives.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's very similar when I was doing brand work full time. I
Mm-hmm.
only do it selectively now, but it was building a workshop of cross-functional leaders. I wasn't
Okay.
just working with the marketing team because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want just their perspective on the customer. I want the salesperson's perspective. I want
Mm-hmm.
engineering's perspective. I want
Absolutely.
HR's perspective on the types
Mm-hmm.
of people they're bringing into the organization. I've even had, CFOs and chief legal counsels in the brand workshop because when you can get that holistic view of the customer and the product or service,
Mm-hmm.
I find, and I'm wondering if you do too, that's sometimes where the epiphanies lie.
Absolutely. So we work with major, large scale transformation, client transformation, pivotal moments of their being, often getting them ready to be listed for IPO. It's, big transformations. And we cannot do our job effectively if we don't speak to the CFO or the COO. We need to speak to all those people to understand what the ambitions for the brand is, what, the business looks like. We say, good brand strategy is based in good business strategy, and good business strategy is based in good brand strategy. They are intertwined. You can't
Hmm.
separate the one from the other. And if you don't have the one, so for a lot of our clients, we actually start looking at the organizational processes. We look at how they are structuring themselves, maybe not from an operational,
Right.
practical perspective, but certainly from an external, how are they perceived by the world?
Yes.
And how can we make processes easier internally for them to fulfill the brand function? And sorry, just to come back to the point about business and brand strategy, if the one, they prop each other, one harness, you
A hundred
harness the one
percent.
to
Yeah.
to build the other one. So a lot of the work we do, and that's the foundational work. That's the brand strategy. That's not the articulation. That's not the logo you get at the end.
Right.
It's the brand strategy, and that informs what's the positioning. What is the future back? What's it going to look like in 5 or 10 years? And without that understanding from the CEO, from the money people, from the HR team,
Yeah.
you just can't build a brand that attracts the talent you want, or the investors, or the
Totally.
all. Yeah. Um, so that's infinitely fascinating to work with. We get to have some really interesting conversations with people, and one of my favorite things about working in this industry is, we become these little micro experts in the industry that our clients work in.
Uh-huh.
We're not sector specific. We work a lot with culture and with cultural institutions, but we
Hmm.
also work with telecoms, or companies, global tech companies. And so we become these real experts, micro experts, in very quickly in the worlds of our clients.
Yep.
And it's because we listen. We really, really, we're all extremely curious people. We read. Suddenly, we're like, oh, I need to read everything about this or that, or it starts popping up on my news feed. something relevant to the client's industry. And we really go very deep. And without that real listening and that real genuine curiosity and
Right.
understanding of what our clients are about,
Hmm.
you won't discover what makes them tick. You won't discover why are they that bit different from their competitors? Why
Yeah.
should their audiences buy into their proposition and not, their competitors?
Yeah. Two things there. One, I've always said brand and culture are two sides of the same coin because you
Mm-hmm.
can't put a brand veneer on something if your own house is on fire, right?
Yep.
So if you're going to
Agreed.
say you're innovative or you're empathetic or you're, customer driven, what are the internal processes, rituals, habits, compensation structures,
Mm-hmm.
hiring criteria to populate that environment with the people that are going to live out that brand story and that brand promise. And
Yeah,
that's the
absolutely.
disconnect for so many companies. And that's the thing is they come to you of like, make me the logo, make
Mm-hmm.
me look good, attract leads, but they sometimes don't want to do the inner transformational work that they need to
Mm-hmm.
do. And that, that's what got me down the empathy trail from brand strategy was seeing that there's a lot of internal work that needs to happen from a leadership development standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
from a culture standpoint, all of that. So I love that you're already baking that into the process of let's take a look and see we can aim for an aspirational brand image, but then
Mm-hmm.
what work are you willing to do on the inside to ensure that you walk that talk?
Yeah. So, I mean, as part of that, we have someone on our team called well, he's the director of regenerative economics, and his whole job is to help us advise our clients how can they bring regenerative economics, not sustainability, not something that, makes us break equal, but something a bit more, that one plus one element
Yeah.
into the work we do for our clients. And we've worked with clients that we've given them uh, this is how you could, take your city off the grid. Potentially, we've done that work for our clients, which is nothing to do with brand,
Right.
or ostensibly nothing to do with brand. But if you have that as part of your business, you can speak about that, and
Yeah.
that can become a selling point that would differentiate you from, very clearly from your competitors in this
Right.
case. So we're always looking for ways to kind of help businesses be the best they are. And we have this line that we have coined. So we say we create cultureful brands. It's cultureful is not a word.
I saw that on your website.
But
It was
what
great.
that means is not, we have a brand and we have, Taco Tuesdays or whatever. All of that's important. That's one
Yeah.
thing. But we bring culture, small c and big C, into every aspect of the business. We help them think about how their internal, how they speak to their employees
Hmm.
internally manifest, because without that internal change, you cannot manifest external change. That
Mm-mm.
doesn't, you can't get a team of
No.
unwilling employees, to live and breathe your values and your vision and your mission.
Yeah. And that's, the thing I often speak about is brand strategy engagements are transformation projects if they're
Hmm.
done right, because it's not necessarily to completely change you. It's to your point of doing heavy listening. This is why empathy is the key to success in marketing and
Hmm.
branding. It's doing heavy listening and getting curious and finding the nuggets that, it's you're not a good brand strategist because you bring something to the table
Hmm.
necessarily that's something they've never thought of before.
Hmm.
It's taking everything they're saying, everything they're doing, the things that they might be overlooking. I
Hmm.
always I always get with my clients, it's sort of like, oh yeah, we do this one thing, but that's not very important. And I'm like, that's the most important thing. What are you talking about? So getting them to connect those dots that they can't see for themselves and helping them understand that that is really where the differentiation lies. That's where the story lies. But you can't do that if you come in as a marketer or a brand strategist saying, without even doing any listening, here's what I think you should do.
Hmm.
Here's how I think you should portray yourselves.
Well, and I think that's sort of one of the ailments of our industry. You often get agencies coming and sort of, saying, well, we're the experts and this is what you should be doing. And we know this industry and we know the landscape, and this is, it's sort of put upon the clients. And what we often hear from our clients is, you guys really, you guys really listen. You listen to us and you are reflecting back to us what we said.
Yeah.
You're articulating us because you've listened. It's that
Yeah.
listening thing. And I can't tell you how many big agency names we have superseded with our clients
Uh-huh.
because they've just gone in and say, we're the experts and we are the
Right.
people
Right.
we're telling you, who do you think you are? And I mean, it's one thing doing that to a business. Often people do their jobs to go to work, to get money, to go home and
Right.
be there with
Some
families.
some
Everyone,
companies want that. But
yeah, some
then
companies want that.
if they hope to ever differentiate, because all that does is tell you what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And this is why you should do this. It has no account for if it's authentic to you, if you can actually deliver on that promise, if you're
Hmm.
even interested in delivering on that promise, right? So it's yes, it helps to have some industry knowledge, but it's about hiring people who are empathetic, who know how
Hmm.
to listen, who know how to read the read between the lines of
Yeah.
what's being said from a customer or from a client.
And I was going to say, it's also, I think it's a bit rude and, presumptuous just to
Yeah.
just to be like, well, not to listen to people. It's a basic on a human level, just giving someone that platform. If you can always say respectfully, that's, this is what you're saying, but this is what we've seen, or this is what we can see in your organization.
Right.
And what you're saying is not, there's a say do gap. You're not doing what you say. So that's something
Right.
else. But that's also just reflecting back what you've heard and what
Right.
you've seen.
Right.
But just on a human level, give someone that just the respect of the time of day to listen to them.
Right.
I often think about what we do, especially from in my team, the client relationships aspect of our business. We need to kind of flip the script from just a pure service mindset. You're just there to kind of,
Take
do your
orders.
spreadsheets
Yeah.
and take
Uh-huh.
orders and kind of, but into a relationship mindset. You need to be able to build that trust with your clients. I have a wonderful client who I love, Emma, who she's extremely fair. She'll give me direct feedback if there's something that she doesn't hold. She's honest in our relationship, but she also, when she sends me an early morning text, we're in a different time zone. She said, "I'm really really sorry. I know you're probably getting the kids to school," or there's that real relationship between
Yeah.
my client and myself where you can build greater trust. You'll get more done, you'll get more out of someone when there's just
Yeah.
that basic. And bringing that back to how businesses, the work we do for businesses, if we were just going in there and telling people this is what it is, then we didn't do our jobs.
Right.
We didn't take what's core to them and reflect that back. We've just created yet another generic identity, in a
Yeah.
sea of the same stuff. And you
Well,
can
and
see
it
that
builds,
often in design.
yeah, you touched on it. It builds trust because again, when you bring all those voices to the table, and I especially love it when I've done brand workshops where they bring someone in who's antagonistic, like someone from the tech team or the engineering
Hmm.
team who hates marketing and thinks
Hmm.
it's all a bunch of fluff, right? I
Hmm.
actually love when those people come to those
Absolutely. Yeah.
all-day workshops because number one, they say the hard truths. Number two, you can actually listen to them and
Hmm.
give them space to be heard where maybe people were trying to silence them before because they were a squeaky wheel. And I give them space. Tell me more. Tell me more about that. Why do you feel that way? Why do you think that's not working? Because that's where the gold is. And
That's the
then
nuggets.
when you're able to let them be part of the process and weigh in, you get more buy-in and they
Hmm.
become your biggest champions.
Well, that's the biggest thing about creating a new brand. If you don't have the buy-in from everyone who will be using the brand, this you
Mhm.
can't deploy the brand.
They can't live it out if they don't
You
know
can't.
if they don't embrace it to be able to live it out every
Yeah,
day,
we
then
work with a lot of museums, and we created the Natural History Museum in Abu Dhabi. The identity will be going live soon, and for that we spoke to the archaeologists and the people who are doing the work,
right.
and it was so insightful to learn from their perspective. Not the, I mean, our main client was the corporate entity creating the museum. Their job is to get audiences to come through the door, et cetera, et cetera. But it's also important for the scientists to speak to their audience and to do it correctly. So to not use, sometimes when we write brands, when we create a tone of voice, we use words that sound nice, but for them it's important to use the correct terminology, not just
Exactly.
something that sounds nice.
Yeah.
And we created such a rich brand tapestry, speaking to all these different audiences, because we really listen to these people, to
Right.
the scientists doing all
The
the
work.
the
Yeah.
foundation of the work we'll be
When you
looking
get
at.
a new perspective and a new way to position it or a new way to look
Mm,
at it, because what is the role of a museum? The role of the museum is to bring science to people, right? So if you don't talk to the scientists, basically the ones providing the content, if you want to look at it that way,
then it's just an entertainment
then
brand.
it's
Then
just
it's
exactly, then
you
it's just
know,
a building with exhibits in it,
yeah.
right?
And then why, then go to all the other ones. That's, how do you, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And it's the same thing with, name your industry. If it's software, if it's retail, if it's clothing, if it's
hmm
apparel, if it's sporting goods, whatever it is, it's not about the company that's selling it. It's about what's being made and how it improves the lives or the work of the end customers.
yeah.
And for that,
And
you need multiple points of view.
absolutely. And without the multiple points of view, you kind of, I was saying just earlier, you can see when companies have just done a generic, oh, they've used the same fonts, they've gone on Pinterest, they've put
Yeah.
some mood boards together. And it's so disappointing when you see these
Yeah.
large, rebrands coming out and they're just so blah.
Yeah.
Um, and you need to be able to respond to your brief and your client, challenge that brief by all means. Tell
Of
them this is
course.
not, this is not the right
Yeah.
direction, or we think,
Yeah. Tough
but
love is important to gain trust.
tough
They
love is absolutely, this is one of the points I wanted to, wrote down. Honesty and directness is also empathy.
a
It's
hundred
it's like
percent.
it's like being a good parent. If
Yeah.
you can put your boundaries in place, you can give, not, hard feedback, but
Constructive feedback.
constructive. That's what I was trying to say badly. You can give constructive feedback, but if you're going to be lying to or not being honest,
It doesn't
that's going to
serve
go on
anyone.
anyway.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I mean, I talk about that in my most recent book, The Empathy Dilemma. That's why one of the pillars is clarity and
Okay.
another pillar is decisiveness, because
Mm-hmm.
not done in a shaming or blaming way,
Mm-hmm.
but in a because I value you and I don't want you to be confused. I don't want you to be in the dark. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
you to, I know you don't want to go down the wrong path. I'm going to present this information in a way that you understand what's expected of you. You understand what results are coming. You understand what you're accountable for.
Mm-hmm.
And so radical candor is good, but kind candor is better. And
Absolutely.
that's what I always tell my clients is, look, if you want to hire someone that's going to yes all your ideas, you probably shouldn't hire me because I'm going to, with love, because I care, tell you to either rethink something or let's look at this, or I don't know if that's the best way to say that, because that's my
Mm-hmm.
job. Like for you guys, that's your job is to help them find a path of success.
And our success is our client's success. If we don't, if
Exactly.
we haven't done our job properly, they would
Yeah.
not have the best or the strongest brand. It's also clients also often we often push back, and then they say, well, we still think, and that's fine. That's also their right. But
Yeah.
it's our
They can
job.
make the final call if they really want to.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
But it's our job to really sort of show them all the options, and that's
Yeah.
that's why I mentioned earlier we do sort of quite a varied range of creative approaches when we
Mhm.
do the work. We show clients how can we make something really innovative, out there or different, and then we often land somewhere in the middle, which is away from the safe space, which is
Yeah.
which is good. That's a good place to be. Um, but it's our job to listen, to reflect that back, and then to show
Uh-huh.
them what's the possibilities, what's the blue sky thinking, what
Right.
can happen, and then we get brought back down to earth, and there's
Yeah.
always production budgets and
Right. Right.
practicalities. But it's our job really to do that creative thinking.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit because
Hmm
I know that we were talking before we got on this recording about the importance of brand in everything, including the space you're in,
hmm
right? The space that you operate in. It's not just your brand is everything. It's not just your logo. It's how you walk, how you talk, how you act. And even if you are a physical location, what that looks like, how that makes people feel, how it's inclusive. And I know that you are in the process, your company's in the process of moving to a new studio. And this is about building an empathetic workplace. Now, we're talking about this in the age of the debate between return to office and remote work and hybrid and all of that. And every company's got to figure that out for themselves. There's pros and cons to both. But if you are a company looking at bringing people back into the office, what type of office environment are you bringing them back into? Is it one where they can thrive? Is it one where they can do their best work? So talk to me a little bit about how you are bringing empathy into that process, because I think that would be helpful for leaders listening who are struggling with return to office mandates.
So, I mean, I'm personally, I'm so happy about how the world has changed since the pandemic and how it's allowed us to be able to work flexibly. I think
Yes.
pre all of this, a lot of people struggled with aspects of the open plan office, the
Yes.
commute, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, parents of young children, the flexibility is great, but as you mentioned, we need to also be in person. It's important for younger people, the people coming up in their 20s, learning how to do their job. It's important to be together. It's fun to be together. It's a nice thing to be with your team, to be in person, to have that, in-person interaction with clients as well. I'm a big believer of in-person meetings with clients, not just always over Zoom.
Uh-huh.
But how if we're not going to be empathetic and respectful towards how people like to work and how they do their best work, then we won't be getting the best talent because someone else will be doing it today. But also, again, it's disrespectful. You should be empowering your employees and giving them, to certain limits, whatever they need to do their best work. So we have actually we bought a building in London's Hoxton Square last year, and we've moved in already. But we worked with some architects, also brand architects, called Universal Design Studio to design our space. And what was really important to us was to kind of create the antithesis of the open plan office. I don't know anyone who likes an open plan office, but they might be out there. Let me know
Uh-huh.
if you're one of those people. But some people are introverts, some people are extroverts. We've got different working styles. I do a lot of thinking. I have to do spreadsheets and write, proposals and write things I need to think about. So I can't have music around me. But the creatives, they're designing. It's more of an more automatic brain function, I think. So, they like to listen to podcasts, they like to listen to music. So we really thought about what do people need in this office. Our floor is our building is quirky. It's got 6 different floors. So already it's inherently, got these different spaces. But we worked hard to create sort of soft seating. So, you can go sit on a sofa. We've got curtained off bits so you can have a quiet call. We've got, something we call Siberia, which is just the top of a staircase, which we just built a desk into. So you can go and hide out there, look over the terrace. We had a big window put in. If you really just need to focus on the work you're doing,
Hmm.
and you don't want anyone to find you. And I think this will allow our team to want to come into the office, to
Uh-huh.
enjoy the space we created,
Uh-huh.
to have that opportunity for collaboration, for having lunch together. But then to do the type of work you want to do, how you like to do it. Some people like to stand up and, put lots of post-it notes on the wall. Hello,
Right.
Luke. And, so we need to make sure that we speak to the people. We also built a lovely big kitchen with a stove. You can cook your own food. You don't have to bring in your cold lunch if you want to, heat up a pizza or something. There's an oven. So
Uh-huh.
just really thinking about people, what's it like to work from home? What's all the best bits from working from home? And how can we build elements into that into the office?
Yeah, I love that. And I was mentioning to you that I've been able to be on tour, kind of behind the scenes at
Hmm.
Airbnb, but also some other workplaces like Google and Box. I was part of some inspiration journeys done by a culture firm called Flynn Consulting. I actually
Hmm.
had one of the principals on the show, Rebecca Fries, talking about the importance of culture, and I'll actually link to her episode in the show notes. But we got to have a behind the scenes tour, and a lot of it, especially in recent years, has been about what are we doing with our office design and our office architecture to accommodate different needs and make this a place where people want to come, right?
Mm.
Now, Airbnb was doing this before the pandemic, which is kind of interesting. The way they designed their offices in San Francisco is just phenomenal. It's, you know, open areas for people who thrive on that. It's reconfigurable desks and
Hmm.
spaces so that you can get into small groups. It's
Hmm.
solitary pods that look like phone booths. So if you need to work on your own and sort of be soundproof, you can. It's unique spaces like
Hmm.
climbing up a spiral staircase into a treehouse and doing your work there. And it's also the food and the kitchens and all the perks and all of that. But the point was, it's about adapting to different work styles, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's introverted, extroverted, whether it's neurodiverse, whether it's someone who has certain needs or is disabled, finding different ways to accommodate all those different work styles so that people can eventually produce what you need
Yeah,
them to
absolutely.
produce.
And something I've always been a big advocate of is, getting away from your desk. People,
Yeah.
you need to walk around the block. You need to sort of stand up and see outside and speak to other people. You need to kind of work. So, having spaces where you can go and sit on the sofa, you can see out the window.
Yeah.
I think that just helps creativity, that helps thinking, that helps
Yeah.
fatigue.
It
If you're
helps
feeling like
burnout and
it helps
stress.
burnout,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah, and plants,
And lots of plants.
lots
Exactly.
of plants.
Exactly. Well, I love this. I've loved this conversation. I want to kind of leave off, if you want to share one final gem with leaders listening about what's a good step they can take to open up listening and open up curiosity for themselves or for their own teams.
Mm. Um, I think reading is a very important thing. I think not just of fiction, but of reading things, long reads. Read the New Yorker, read the Times, buy the weekend newspapers, read books, read stories, short stories, kids' books. I've some of my favorite things. Lessons I've learned is from my children's books,
Mhm.
and think outside of your industry. I think if you want to cultivate a culture of empathy, and of listening to the perspective of someone else, you have to practice that muscle.
Mhm.
And I think you do that. Reading is such an easy thing to do. Podcasts, obviously, that's great
Right.
as well. But have listening, finding out that perspective
Yeah.
of people beyond your experience, beyond your industry, beyond
Yeah.
your culture.
Yeah.
Reading about other cultures, etc. And then I think if once you have that sort of foundation, it naturally gets built into the way you work. It becomes important
Yes.
for you to have that curiosity,
Yeah.
to do that listening, that two-way
Yeah.
thinking and listening with any interaction.
I had that as one of the habits of building your empathy, strengthening your empathy muscle in my first empathy
Okay.
book, The Empathy Edge, which was explore with your imagination. And it was
Hmm.
precisely that. It was consume art, music, podcasts, documentaries, uh, binge on Netflix if you want, but try to
Hmm.
consume information so you can practice listening and practice imagining someone else's perspective in a
Hmm.
safe place where you don't feel threatened by it, right? And exercising that muscle so it starts to become your default, as you're
Hmm.
saying, your
And I
default
think
operating system.
we get that often. We get ideas from industries that's not even the industry we're working for a
A
client
hundred
in.
percent.
That
Yeah.
cross-pollination of ideas
Yeah.
is so important, that finding innovation in things that's nothing to do with the industry you're working
Right.
on. So it's just about being curious. It's about being curious and really wanting to get information out of someone, that I think is useful for any leader in any industry, I
I love
think.
it. Well, thank you so much, Vanya, for this great conversation. I could probably talk to you more about geeking out over brand strategy and brand storytelling, but we are out of time. So I will have all your links in the show notes. But for anyone that's on the go or exercising while they're listening to us, where's the best place they can learn more about you and the agency's work?
Thanks, Maria, and thanks for having me. It was a real pleasure. So we are Wiedemann Lampe. You might have to. I'll spell that out for you. It's a WIEDEMANNLAMPE, and that's .com, wiedemannlampe.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, Vanya du Toit, VANYADU space TOIT. And thank you so much. I've really enjoyed speaking to you. I also have so much more to say, but maybe another
I know we'll
time.
have to have another conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Empathy Edge podcast. If you like what you heard, you know what to do. Rate and review or share it with a friend or a colleague. And until next time, please remember that cash flow, creativity, and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Take care and be kind.